Have you ever been in a situation where you look around, maybe at work, and you see two colleagues? They seem to have pretty much identical skill sets, right? Equally experienced, equally smart. Yet one of them just seems to, well, effortlessly attract the big projects, the promotions, all those strategic opportunities, while the other person, just as good, remains kind of overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Happens all the time.
Yeah, and it's that dynamic we often just chalk up to, well, sheer luck, maybe. Or perhaps being in the right place at the right time, or having better
Sure,
connections.
those things can play a part.
But what if that favor, that sort of magnetic pull towards real, lasting success and influence, wasn't random at all? Our mission today is to really do a deep dive into some source material, arguing exactly that this kind of sustained success isn't luck, it's actually magnetized by something they call the unseen architect of character.
Hmm.
We're looking for the, let's say, strategic, practical payoff of personal integrity here.
Yeah, and what jumps out immediately from those sources is that we might need to tweak our definition of favor. It's not just some lucky break. It's profoundly relational. It really rests where character has already built the necessary foundation.
Okay, relational. How so?
Well, think of it like this. Skill gets you noticed, right? It's the flashy portfolio, gets your foot in the door. But character is that invisible currency, the currency of influence that keeps you trusted. It keeps key stakeholders actually betting on you, and it invites you into those inner circles, where the most valuable decisions get made.
And you're saying this is more relevant now than ever?
Oh, absolutely. The sources are pretty definitive on this. We are living through, well, a massive credibility crisis.
Hmm.
In leadership, the most valuable commodity today, it isn't speed, it isn't even innovation, really. It's integrity. Everything is so transparent now, isn't it?
It really is.
Which means your internal life, your sort of personal, ethical architecture, well, that's rapidly becoming your external public reputation.
Okay, let's unpack that idea then, character overriding the resume. The sources use a fantastic historical case study, really illustrates this kind of instantaneous transfer of trust. It's the story of Joseph in Egypt.
Ah, yes. Powerful example.
I mean, here's a man who was literally a slave, then a prisoner, a foreigner, yet he stands before Pharaoh, the leader of a superpower at the time. And within hours, he's basically handed the economic and governmental keys to the entire nation.
It's monumental favor, absolutely.
Mm.
And the immediate question is why? Why would a world leader just ignore all the standard vetting procedures?
Yeah.
Why place all his chips on an unknown foreigner with, frankly, a disastrous background?
Exactly. What did Pharaoh see?
Well, he didn't see Joseph's resume, which, like you said, read shepherd, slave, escaped prisoner. Not great on paper. He saw the residue of character. The sources really highlight this. Pharaoh recognized discernment wrapped in integrity.
Discernment wrapped in integrity.
Yes, and wisdom clothed in humility, plus confidence anchored in purity. It seems Joseph's past failures, his suffering, had actually refined him. It created this trustworthy platform. His integrity was just so palpable, it somehow spoke louder than any actual visible accomplishments he had at that point.
So we're really talking about an ancient principle here, but one that operates exactly the same way in, say, the modern corporate landscape.
Precisely. Tech evolves constantly, markets shift, we know that, but the principle of trust, that's constant. When the pressure's really on or a crisis hits, people don't follow titles on an org chart, do they?
No, not really. They follow people.
They follow the person whose integrity they genuinely believe will hold steady. So character stops being just some vague moral ideal and becomes actual strategic currency. The professionals who successfully scale their influence, and maybe more importantly, sustain it over time. They're the ones whose character structure doesn't wobble when the market or the organization gets stressed. They become the known quantity in a landscape full of unknowns.
I like that phrase you used earlier, the architecture of the soul. That's compelling. Before we dive into the specific materials, the pillars you mentioned, talk a bit more about what that architecture actually does. Is it just about being a quote-unquote good person, or is there a strategic outcome?
Oh, it's absolutely strategic. Think about it. If favor is the heavy weight of responsibility, the big promotion, the high-stakes project, maybe a significant investment someone makes in your idea,
Okay.
then character is the foundational architecture you need to bear that weight without it collapsing or becoming warped under pressure. And the sources identify three essential sort of load-bearing materials that make up this architecture.
Right, the pillars. Let's get into those.
Okay, the first pillar is integrity. They call it the load-bearing pillar. Now, most people define integrity simply as honesty, not lying.
Sure, that's the common definition.
But the source material goes quite a bit deeper. Integrity is the consistent alignment of your words, your thoughts, and your deeds. It means you are whole, complete, undivided.
Okay, whole and undivided. And in a modern context, why is that so critical? Because often we think of business transactions as purely rational, maybe even transactional, not really moral.
Well, integrity acts as the ultimate risk mitigation tool. In a business context, integrity creates predictability. That's key. If I know your word is consistently aligned with your actions, I don't need excessive oversight, do I?
No, I suppose not. Saves time and energy.
Exactly. It dramatically lowers transactional friction and risk. It's like the cheapest insurance policy you can get.
Mm.
The source material actually reinforces this using Proverbs 10.9. It notes, whoever walks in integrity walks securely,
Securely.
but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Secure means stable, dependable, predictable.
That predictability really is the payoff, isn't it? Because influence you might gain without integrity, maybe through manipulation or cutting corners, it might give you a quick win, sure, but it's ultimately brittle. It just collapses under the smallest bit of scrutiny because that foundation, that consistent alignment, it just wasn't there.
Precisely. Which brings us neatly to the second essential material, humility. They call it the hidden magnet. Now, this one can be tough, especially for ambitious professionals.
Yeah, I can see that.
We operate in a culture that often rewards the loudest voice, right? Aggressive self-promotion seems to be the norm sometimes. So the question is, how can humility possibly be a magnet for favor?
That's exactly my question. If I'm humble, won't I just get stepped over or ignored? How do we reconcile humility with needing visibility, with having ambition?
It's a great question. And the key is understanding humility isn't about self-deprecation or thinking less of yourself. It's more about having an accurate assessment of yourself. Knowing your strengths, yes, but also acknowledging your weaknesses, your limits. It's a posture, really. A posture that attracts favor not because you're aggressively pursuing it, but because it makes your heart, your mind, receptive to guidance, to coaching, to accountability. And crucially, it disarms that natural resistance people feel towards arrogance.
Okay, so it makes you approachable, teachable.
Exactly. The sources point to Esther, the biblical figure, her influence, her eventual bravery. It was rooted in her fundamental humility and her obedience to counsel from Mordecai. Not just leveraging her title as queen, she listened. In the workplace today, humility is what can transform ambition from, say, a solo ego trip into a shared vision.
Ah, I can see the strategic value there immediately. If a leader practices genuine humility, they'll actively seek feedback, won't they? They'll actually listen to dissent, maybe even value it. And critically, they share credit generously.
Yes, sharing credit, that's huge.
That really removes those toxic ego dynamics that can just shatter teams. So humility, in that sense, is what makes a powerful person safe to be around, trustworthy.
Absolutely. It keeps the architecture structurally sound, flexible, and prevents it from becoming rigid or brittle under stress.
Okay, integrity and humility. What's the third pillar?
Finally, we get to the third pillar, purity. They term it the stabilizing force. Now, for a professional audience, let's maybe refine this slightly and talk about purity of motive.
Purity of motive. I like that refinement. It feels more applicable day to day. So what does that look like practically? Say when you're making a high-stakes decision.
Purity of motive ensures clarity of vision. That's its function. It shields the individual from compromise, from political manipulation, because their decisions are guided by sound organizational principle or shared values, not by personal gain or some hidden agenda.
Right, the hidden agenda problem.
Think back to Joseph. When he maintained his, let's call it, clean heart, by refusing Potiphar's wife's advances early on, that wasn't just a personal moral victory, it was a signal, it said. This man is trustworthy because his decisions will benefit Egypt, not just enrich himself down the line.
It creates a safe platform for responsibility then.
Exactly. A safe platform. Think about it. If you have tremendous influence, tremendous power, but your motives are unclear, are you building this division for the company's good? Or are you just trying to position yourself for the C-suite next year? That ambiguity, that lack of clarity creates massive distrust.
Yeah, it really does. It breeds cynicism.
Purity of motive ensures that when favor does land on you, that promotion, that project, it lands on a stable platform, a platform that can sustain its intended purpose. If the platform itself is compromised by mixed motives, well, the influence it carries will inevitably be distorted, maybe even dangerous.
That makes the distinction crystal clear. Okay, so we have integrity, that's consistency and stability, then humility, providing safety and teachability. And finally, purity of motive, ensuring clear intention. That's the architecture.
Yeah.
But the daily grind, right? Especially in competitive environments. It feels like we're constantly facing the temptation to compromise on these things.
Oh, absolutely. The sources address this tension directly. It's very real. In a world that's obsessed with immediate performance, measurable outputs, quarterly results, the temptation to cut corners for a short-term win is incredibly powerful, and we rationalize it, don't we?
We do. It's just this once. Or it's just efficiency.
Exactly. This is where the source material uses that powerful analogy, the barter for a bowl of soup. It references the biblical story of Esau trading his enduring generational birthright, his position, his favor for a single fleeting meal because he was hungry right now.
Wow. That's a stark comparison.
But professionals make this exact bargain every single day, in small ways and large. They trade that long-term, sustained credibility, the kind built on trust, for a fleeting opportunity, fudging numbers just slightly to hit a quarterly bonus.
Or maybe lying in a meeting to avoid accountability for a mistake.
Yes, or undermining a colleague subtly to get ahead for a quick promotion. It's the bowl of soup.
And the risk of making that bargain feels even higher today, maybe because of transparency and technology. Our sources point out that AI, for example, can replicate skills and efficiency at an unbelievable rate. And market trends, they shift overnight. Those things, skills, trend awareness, they feel almost disposable.
They can be, but compromise erodes the one truly non-replicable asset you possess, your personal credibility, your character.
So influence gain without integrity. It's basically ephemeral.
Absolutely ephemeral. It might appear quickly, maybe even dramatically, looks impressive for a moment,
Yeah.
but it is always vulnerable to exposure. Always. And once trust is lost, well, we all know it takes a monumental effort to rebuild that architecture, if it's even possible. Character remains the true, strategic, irreplaceable advantage. It allows you to be chosen, to be trusted, when others who might even be momentarily more impressive on the surface are dismissed as just too high risk.
Okay, this is crucial. Let's pivot hard then to practical application. This is what listeners need. If we agree that character is this foundation that sustains favor, how do we actively build it? How do we fortify it in the middle of the daily rush, the pressures of our professional lives?
Right, the how. The sources stress that favor isn't like winning the lottery. It is a revelation of readiness. It shows up when the foundation is ready to bear the weight, and that foundation is built in the small, often unseen daily decisions.
The small things.
Yes. How we speak to junior staff when no one important is listening. How we manage small resources, even the office supply budget. How we respond to minor setbacks or challenges. That daily faithfulness, that consistency, that is the crucial preparatory work. The principle holds. You have to prove yourself faithful, trustworthy in the small things before you can realistically be trusted with the great things.
That's challenging though, isn't it? Because the pressure to deliver big results now often makes those small things seem completely irrelevant, trivial even.
It does feel that way.
Yeah.
But they're not trivial, they're foundational.
So how do we operationalize this, make it concrete? The sources suggest a really important exercise around identifying non-negotiable values.
Yes, this is the strategic line in the sand. It's critical. You absolutely must identify, maybe write down, 3 core non-negotiable values. These are principles you commit to protect, regardless of the perceived cost, even if protecting them might cost you a job or a client or that promotion you wanted.
And these can't just be abstract ideas like honesty.
No, they need to be actionable, specific enough to guide behavior. These values serve as your internal anchors. They determine when the pressure really mounts and that tempting compromise looks appealing. They determine whether you are actually capable, deep down, of being trusted with significant responsibility. It's your internal compass.
The power of that exercise, it seems, is in the preemptive decision-making. Like you mentioned with Joseph earlier, his no to temptation wasn't some spontaneous act of willpower in the moment.
Not at all.
It was the result, the reflex almost, of a life already disciplined around core non-negotiable principles. Purity was already a non-negotiable for him. It wasn't a debate when the test came.
Exactly right. It was pre-decided. And that leads directly to another practical concept, the periodic integrity audit.
Integrity audit. Okay, what does that involve?
It's basically a rigorous, honest check for misalignment in your own life. We need to regularly, maybe quarterly, ask ourselves the hard questions. Does my calendar, where I actually spend my time, and does my budget, where I actually spend my money, do these things truly align with my stated non-negotiable values? Or is there a gap?
Okay, give me an example. Let's say my non-negotiable value is transparency, but my calendar shows I spend, I don't know, 3 hours a week in private, closed-door meetings with just a select few, while maybe consistently ignoring requests for broader team updates. That would be a misalignment.
That's a perfect concrete example. The calendar reveals a potential gap between the stated value, transparency, and the actual behavior.
Hmm.
It might suggest a political motive is creeping in, not a pure one focused on open communication. The integrity audit helps you detect those early structural cracks in your character architecture.
Before they become visible failures.
Exactly. Before they widen under pressure. It allows you to proactively repair those small compromises, those bowl of soup bargains we talked about,
Mm.
before they cause the entire structure of your credibility to collapse when the weight of greater favor finally arrives.
Wow, this has really shifted the conversation, for me at least, from something that feels like purely moral idealism to something much more grounded in strategic self-management, building a reliable internal structure.
That's the core idea. Success that truly lasts, the kind that has depth and resilience. It isn't merely earned by cleverness or ingenuity or just being lucky with timing. It is ultimately granted through favor. And that favor requires, demands really, a stable, trustworthy platform built meticulously on character.
Okay, so the final synthesis seems crystal clear.
That's the key takeaway, I think. You're always building your character, whether you realize it or not, day by day, choice by choice. The material you are choosing to build is with integrity, humility, purity of motive that will determine the longevity, the strength, and ultimately the strategic potential of your influence.
That is a truly powerful message to carry forward. Okay, let's try to quickly summarize the essence of our deep dive today. Fundamentally, favor follows character. It's relational. And integrity, humility, and purity of motive are the, well, unseen but essential strategic materials that draw lasting influence towards you.
Well put. And perhaps here's a thought, a question for you, the listener, to carry forward this week, building on that architecture metaphor. If character truly is the unseen framework that sustains success, what weight, maybe, what unexamined ambition, what recurring political maneuvering, or what small, seemingly insignificant, consistent compromise extent? What weight are you currently building into your life that your foundation, your current character structure might not actually be strong enough to bear?
That's a sobering question, a really important one. Maybe take some serious time this week to identify or perhaps reaffirm those three non negotiable values you are absolutely committed to protecting. Because that foundation, strengthening that, is the real work that will determine your ability to build and sustain long term influence. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.